Welcome to the ultimate guide on Microsoft Azure Cloud interview preparation. In this video, we'll cover 200 expert-level interview questions and answers, from fundamentals of cloud computing to advanced topics like AI/ML, serverless, DevOps, security, real-world case studies, and the future of Azure. Whether you're aiming for roles like Azure Cloud Engineer, Solutions Architect, or DevOps Professional, this video is your complete masterclass on Azure. What is Microsoft Azure? Microsoft Azure is a leading cloud computing platform offering 200-plus services across compute, storage, networking, AI/ML, and DevOps. It enables organizations to build, deploy, and manage applications globally without managing physical infrastructure. What are the main cloud service models supported by Azure? Azure supports YES, virtual machines, storage, networking. PaaS, app services, functions, databases. SaaS, Office 365, Dynamics 365. This flexibility allows businesses to choose the right abstraction level. What are the Azure deployment models? Public cloud, shared Azure infrastructure. Private cloud, dedicated infra using Azure Stack. Hybrid cloud, combines on-prem and Azure via Arc, VPN, ExpressRoute. Multi-cloud, integration across providers. How is Azure different from AWS and GCP? Azure is strong in hybrid cloud. Azure Arc, Stack, integrates deeply with Microsoft products, Windows Server, Active Directory, Office 365, and has a strong enterprise footprint. AWS leads in breadth, GCP in data, or AI. What is the Azure Global Infrastructure? It consists of regions, availability zones, and edge locations. Regions are geographic clusters. AZs provide redundancy within a region, and edge nodes reduce latency with CDN services. What is the difference between a region and an availability zone in Azure? Region, a geographical area. Example, East US, West Europe. Availability zone, AZ, an isolated data center within a region. Deploying across AZs ensures high availability and fault tolerance. What is the Azure Resource Manager, ARM? ARM is the deployment and management layer for Azure resources. It enables infrastructure as code via ARM templates, role-based access, and consistent APIs across services. What is the Azure free tier? Azure offers 12 months of free services, example VMS, Blob storage, SQLDB, always free services like functions and app service, and a $200 credit for new users to explore paid services. What is elasticity in Azure? Elasticity is the ability to automatically scale resources up or down based on workload demand. For example, Azure VM scale sets or app service plans can adjust capacity dynamically. What is scalability in Azure? Scalability refers to handling growth in workloads. Vertical scaling, increasing VM size. Horizontal scaling, adding more VMS or instances. Azure supports both to meet performance needs. What is the shared responsibility model in Azure? Security responsibilities are shared. Microsoft secures the cloud, like data centers, hardware, core infrastructure. Customers secure what's in the cloud, like apps, data, identity, access. What are some core Azure services? Compute, VMS, app services, functions, AKS. Storage, Blob disk files, databases, SQLDB, Cosmos DB, Synapse. Networking VNet, load balancer, front door, security, Azure AD, Key Vault. What is the Azure Well-Architected Framework? It's a set of best practices for cloud workloads across 5 pillars. 1. Reliability. 2. Security. 3. Cost optimization. 4. Operational excellence. 5. Performance efficiency. How does Azure ensure high availability? Azure provides HA through multi-AZ deployments, load balancers, VM scale sets, database replicas, and geo-redundant storage. SLA-backed services ensure uptime commitments of 99.9% plus. What is fault tolerance in Azure? Fault tolerance means the system continues working even if some components fail. Azure achieves this through redundancy, multi-AZ deployments, auto-healing services, and geo-replication. What is Azure's pay-as-you-go pricing model? Customers pay only for the resources they consume, like VMS by the hour/minute, storage by GB, and functions by execution time. No upfront hardware costs are required. What is the difference between CapEx and OpEx in Azure? Capital expenditure, upfront IT infrastructure investment. OpEx, ongoing operational costs via pay-as-you-go. Azure enables OpEx, reducing upfront costs and enabling agility. What are edge locations in Azure? These are points of presence, POPs, used by Azure CDN and Front Door to cache content closer to users, improving global performance and reducing latency. How does Azure handle disaster recovery? Azure provides Azure Site Recovery for replication and failover, geo-redundant storage GRS, and multi-region deployment strategies to ensure business continuity. Why do companies migrate to Azure? Key reasons: cost savings, scalability, deep integration with Microsoft tools, global reach, enhanced security, and advanced services like AI/ML, analytics, and serverless computing. What are Azure Virtual Machines? Azure VMS are IaaS offerings that provide scalable computing power in the cloud. You can choose OS, size, and configuration, paying only for usage. They're ideal for hosting apps, dev/test environments, or extending on-prem infrastructure. What are VM scale sets in Azure? VM scale sets let you deploy and manage a group of identical, load-balanced VMS. They automatically scale up or down based on demand, ensuring high availability and performance. What is Azure App Service? App Service is a PaaS offering to build and host web apps, REST APIs, and mobile backends. It supports multiple languages like C#, Python, Node.js, Java, and provides auto-scaling, CI/CD integration, and managed infrastructure. What is Azure Functions? Azure Functions is a serverless compute service that runs event-driven code without provisioning servers. You only pay per execution. It's widely used for microservices, IoT processing, and automation. What is the maximum execution time for Azure Functions? On the consumption plan, the limit is 5 minutes by default, extendable up to 10 minutes. On the premium plan, it can run indefinitely, suitable for long-running workloads. What is the difference between App Service and Azure Functions? App Service, long-running applications, APIs, websites. Functions, short-lived, event-driven tasks. App Service suits persistent workloads, while Functions are best for serverless event handling. What is Azure Container Instances, ACI? ACI allows you to run containers on demand without managing VMS or orchestrators. It's ideal for quick tasks, batch jobs, or lightweight microservices. What is Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS? AKS is a managed Kubernetes service. It automates provisioning, scaling, and upgrades of Kubernetes clusters, letting you deploy and manage containerized applications more easily. What is the difference between ACI and AKS? ACI run individual containers without orchestration. AKS, full Kubernetes orchestration for large-scale complex workloads. ACI is lightweight. AKS is for enterprise-scale container management. What is Azure Batch? Azure Batch runs large-scale parallel and high-performance computing HPC applications. It distributes workloads across virtual machines and scales automatically, making it ideal for simulations and rendering. What is Azure Service Fabric? Service Fabric is a distributed systems platform for microservices and containers. It supports stateful and stateless services with features like automatic scaling, health monitoring, and rolling upgrades. What is the difference between Service Fabric and AKS? Service Fabric, Microsoft's microservices framework with deep Windows or .NET integration. AKS, open source Kubernetes orchestration. Service Fabric is niche but powerful. AKS is industry standard. What is Azure Cloud Services Classic? It's a PaaS model that predates App Service, offering role-based deployment like web roles, worker roles. While still supported, It's being replaced by modern offerings like App Service and AKS. What is Azure Dedicated Host? Dedicated Host provides physical servers dedicated to one customer. It's used for compliance, licensing flexibility, BYOL, and workloads requiring isolation from shared infrastructure. What is Azure Virtual Desktop AVD? AVD is a managed desktop and app virtualization service. It delivers Windows desktops and apps securely over the internet, integrated with Azure AD and Microsoft 365. What is Azure Spot VM? Spot VMs use unused Azure capacity at deep discounts, up to 90%. They can be evicted when capacity is needed, making them ideal for fault-tolerant and batch workloads. What is Azure Reserve VM Instances, RIS? Reserve VMs allow you to commit to 1 or 3-year terms for significant cost savings, up to 72%, compared to pay-as-you-go pricing, best for steady workloads. What is the difference between Spot virtual machines and reserved instances? Spot VMS, low cost, interruptible. Reserved instances, discounted, predictable capacity with commitment. Choice depends on workload flexibility versus stability. What is Azure Arc? Azure Arc extends Azure services to on-premises and multi-cloud environments. It enables managing VMS, Kubernetes clusters, and databases outside Azure with a single control plane. How do you choose the right compute option in Azure? It depends on workload, VMS/scale sets for traditional apps, app service for web apps, functions for serverless, ACI/AKS for containers, batch for HPC, dedicated host/AVD for compliance or desktops. What is Azure Blob Storage? Azure Blob Storage is Microsoft's object storage solution for unstructured data like images, videos, and backups. It offers hot, cool, and archive tiers to balance cost and access speed. What are the types of blobs in Azure Blob Storage? Block blobs, for text and binary files. Append blobs, optimized for append operations like logging. Page blobs, store random access files, used in VHDS for Azure VMS. What is Azure Disk Storage? Disk storage provides persistent block storage for Azure VMS. It supports standard HDD, standard SSD, premium SSD, and Ultra Disk options to match workload needs. What is Azure Files? Azure Files provides fully managed file shares in the cloud using SMB and NFS protocols. Multiple VMS and on-prem systems can mount these shares simultaneously. What is Azure Table Storage? Table storage is a NoSQL key value store for structured, non-relational data. It's highly scalable, low cost, and ideal for applications requiring fast lookups. What is Azure Queue Storage? Queue Storage is a message queuing service for communication between application components. It's often used for decoupling microservices and scalable architectures. What is Azure Archive Storage? Archive storage is the lowest cost tier in blob storage, designed for data rarely accessed. Retrieval may take hours, making it best for compliance and archival. What is Azure Data Lake Storage? A DLS is built on blob storage, optimized for big data analytics. It supports hierarchical namespaces, enabling faster processing for frameworks like Hadoop and Spark. What is the difference between blob storage and data lake storage? Blob storage, general purpose object storage. Data lake storage, built on blob, optimized for analytics with hierarchical namespace and fine-grained access controls. What is Azure SQL Database? Azure SQL Database is a fully managed relational database as a service DBaaS compatible with SQL Server. It handles backups, scaling, high availability, and patching automatically. What is Azure SQL Managed Instance? SQL Managed Instance is a PaaS database offering nearly full compatibility with on-prem SQL Server, ideal for migrating workloads with minimal changes. What is the difference between Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance? SQL Database, simpler, fully managed single or multi-database option. Managed Instance, broader SQL Server compatibility for enterprise migrations. What is Azure Cosmos DB? Cosmos DB is a fully managed NoSQL database with global distribution, low latency less than 10 milliseconds, and multiple APIs like SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, Gremlin, Table. What are Cosmos DB consistency models? Cosmos DB supports 5 levels: strong, bounded staleness, session, consistent prefix, and eventual. This allows trade-offs between performance and data consistency. What is Azure Database for PostgreSQL or MySQL? These are fully managed open-source database services. Azure handles backups, patching, scaling, and high availability, letting developers focus on applications. What is Azure Synapse Analytics? Synapse is a cloud data warehouse for big data and analytics. It integrates SQL-based queries with Spark and connects seamlessly to Power BI for visualization. What is Azure Databricks? Databricks is an Apache Spark-based analytics platform optimized for Azure. It supports data engineering, ML, and AI workloads with collaboration and integration into Azure ML and Synapse. What is Azure Cache for Redis? Azure Cache for Redis is an in-memory data store for caching, session management, and real-time analytics. It reduces database load and speeds up applications. What is Azure Database Migration Service, DMS? DMS helps migrate on-prem or cloud databases to Azure with minimal downtime. It supports SQL Server, Oracle, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and more. How do you choose between SQL Database, Cosmos DB, and Synapse? SQL Database, Transactional Workloads, OLTP. Cosmos DB, Global Scale NoSQL or Multi-API Apps. Synapse, Analytics and Reporting, OLAP. The choice depends on workload type and performance needs. What is an Azure Virtual Network, VNet? An Azure VNet is a logically isolated network in the cloud. It allows secure communication between Azure resources, on-premises systems, and the internet. VNet supports subnets, peering, and network security policies. What are subnets in Azure VNet? Subnets divide a VNet into smaller address ranges. They help organize resources and apply network security rules. For example, you can place web servers in a public subnet and databases in a private subnet. What is a network security group, NSG? An NSG is a firewall that controls inbound and outbound traffic to Azure resources. Rules are based on IP, port, and protocol. NSGs are applied at subnet or NIC levels. What is the difference between NSGS and Azure Firewall? NSG, basic traffic filtering at subnet or NIC level. Azure Firewall, a fully managed firewall with advanced features like threat intelligence, application rules, and logging. What is Azure Load Balancer? Azure Load Balancer distributes traffic across multiple VMS or services. It supports Layer 4, TCP or UDP traffic, and offers both public and internal load balancing for scaling and high availability. What is Azure Application Gateway? It's a Layer 7 load balancer that provides features like SSL termination, cookie-based affinity, and Web Application Firewall, WAF. It routes traffic intelligently for web applications. What is the difference between load balancer and application gateway? Load balancer, Layer 4, distributes TCP or UDP traffic. App gateway, Layer 7, routes HTTP or HTTPS traffic with advanced features like WAF. They're often used together. What is Azure Front Door? Azure Front Door is a global application delivery network. It combines load balancing, CDN, SSL offloading, and application acceleration with routing based on latency and performance. What is the difference between Front Door and Application Gateway? Front Door, global load balancing, CDN, edge-based routing. App Gateway, regional load balancing with WAF. Front Door is for global applications. App Gateway for in-region traffic. What is Azure ExpressRoute? ExpressRoute is a private, dedicated connection between on-premises infrastructure and Azure. It offers higher reliability, lower latency, and more security than internet-based connections. What is VNet peering? VNet peering connects two VNets, enabling traffic flow as if they were one network. It uses the Azure backbone, ensuring low latency and no internet exposure. What is the difference between VNet peering and VPN gateway? VNet peering connects VNets within Azure. VPN gateway connects VNets to on-premises networks via encrypted tunnels. What is Azure VPN gateway? VPN gateway provides secure site-to-site, point-to-site, and VNet to VNet connections using IPsec or IKE protocols. It connects Azure resources to on-prem networks securely. What is Azure Bastion? Bastion provides secure RDP/SSH access to VMS directly in the Azure portal without exposing them to the public internet. It reduces attack surface while improving accessibility. What is Azure Traffic Manager? Traffic Manager is a DNS-based global traffic distribution service. It routes user requests to endpoints based on policies like performance, priority, or geographic location. What is the difference between Traffic Manager and Front Door? Traffic Manager, DNS-based routing client, resolves endpoint. Front Door acts as a proxy, providing acceleration and caching. Front Door is faster, while Traffic Manager is simpler for DNS-level distribution. What is Azure CDN? Azure CDN caches static content at edge locations worldwide, reducing latency and improving load times for users. It integrates with Blob storage, app service, and Front Door. What are the Azure CDN providers? Azure CDN is powered by Microsoft, Akamai, and Verizon. Customers can choose based on performance, global reach, and feature needs. What is Azure DDoS protection? Azure DDoS protection defends against distributed denial of service attacks. Basic, built-in for all VNets. Standard, advanced monitoring, mitigation, and reporting. How does Azure ensure global, low-latency networking? Azure achieves this with 60-plus regions, high-speed backbone fiber, 180-plus edge sites, services like ExpressRoute, Front Door, Traffic Manager, and CDN, all optimized for performance and resilience. What is Azure Active Directory, Azure AD? Azure AD is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management service. It provides single sign-on SSO, multi-factor authentication MFA, and identity protection for users, apps, and devices. What is the difference between Azure AD and on-prem Active Directory? On-prem AD manages Windows-based domains, devices, and group policies. Azure AD Cloud-Native Identity integrates with SaaS apps, supports SSO, MFA, and external users. They can work together via Azure AD Connect. What is Azure RBAC? Role-Based Access Control, RBAC, allows fine-grained access management for Azure resources. You assign roles like reader, contributor, or owner to users, groups, or applications at different scopes: subscription, resource group, resource. What is Privileged Identity Management PIM? Azure PIM provides just-in-time privileged access to Azure resources. It reduces risk by granting temporary admin rights with approval workflows and activity logging. What is Azure Key Vault? Key Vault securely stores secrets, encryption keys, and certificates. It integrates with Azure services for encryption and supports HSM-backed key storage for compliance. What is the difference between Key Vault and Managed Identity? Key Vault stores secrets and keys. Managed Identity eliminates the need to manage credentials by automatically providing secure identity for Azure resources. They're often used together. What is Microsoft Defender for Cloud? Defender for Cloud is a cloud security posture management CSPM and workload protection service. It provides recommendations, threat detection, and compliance checks across Azure, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments. What is Microsoft Sentinel? Sentinel is a cloud-native SIEM, security information and event management, and SOAR, security orchestration, automation, response platform. It collects data, detects threats, and automates responses at scale. What is the difference between Defender for Cloud and Sentinel? Defender for Cloud protects workloads and ensures compliance. Sentinel aggregates logs, detects threats, and automates responses. Together, they provide layered cloud security. What is Azure Policy? Azure Policy enforces governance rules across resources. For example, restricting VM sizes, enforcing encryption, or blocking deployments in unauthorized regions. It ensures compliance automatically. What are Azure blueprints? Blueprints bundle policies, RBAC assignments, and ARM templates into reusable governance packages. They help organizations deploy compliant, standardized environments at scale. What is Azure Security Center? Security Center, integrated into Defender for Cloud, provides a unified view of security posture, recommendations for hardening, and continuous monitoring for Azure and hybrid workloads. What is conditional access in Azure? AD conditional access applies policies that control access to apps based on conditions like user, location, device compliance, or risk signals. For example, requiring MFA when logging in from unknown networks. What is identity protection in Azure AD? It's a service that detects suspicious sign-ins and risky users using machine learning. Policies can enforce MFA, block sign-ins, or trigger remediation automatically. What is the difference between Azure MFA and conditional access? MFA adds an extra authentication factor. Examples are OTP, biometric. Conditional access enforces policies which may require MFA as one action. Conditional access is broader. MFA is one of its tools. What is Azure Information Protection AIP? AIP is a data protection solution for classifying, labeling, and encrypting documents and emails. It ensures sensitive information stays secure across devices and organizations. What is Azure DDoS protection? Azure DDoS protection defends applications from distributed denial of service attacks. Basic, automatic protection for all VNets. Standard, advanced monitoring, adaptive tuning, and cost protection. What is just-in-time VM access? JIT-VM access reduces attack exposure by allowing temporary time-bound access to VMS users request access via Defender for Cloud, which enforces least privilege. What is the Zero Trust security model in Azure? Zero Trust assumes no implicit trust. Every access request is authenticated, authorized, and encrypted, regardless of origin. Azure implements Zero Trust through conditional access, NMFA, microsegmentation, and continuous monitoring. How does Azure support compliance requirements? Azure complies with global standards like ISO, HIPAA, GDPR, FEDRAMP. Tools like Azure Policy, Blueprints, and Compliance Manager help organizations implement and audit compliance controls. What is Azure DevOps? Azure DevOps is a suite of services for managing the software lifecycle. It includes boards, agile planning, repos, like Git repos, pipelines, like CI/CD, test plans, and artifacts. It supports both cloud-native and hybrid workflows. What is the difference between Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions? Azure DevOps, enterprise-grade, supports pipelines, boards, and artifacts with deep Azure integration. GitHub Actions focuses on CI/CD automation inside GitHub repos. Many enterprises use both, depending on needs. What is an Azure pipeline? Azure pipelines automate build, test, and deployment workflows. They support YAML-based definitions, multiple environments, and integration with Kubernetes, VMS, and serverless. What are release pipelines in Azure DevOps? Release pipelines handle staged deployments with approvals and gates. They allow blue-green, canary, or rolling deployment strategies for controlled releases. What is Azure Resource Manager ARM template? ARM templates define Azure resources as code in JSON. They ensure consistent, repeatable deployments and integrate with CI/CD pipelines for infrastructure as code IAC. What is Bicep in Azure? Bicep is a domain-specific language, DSL, for IAC on Azure. It's a more concise, human-readable alternative to JSON ARM templates while compiling into ARM. What is Azure Automation? Azure Automation is a service for automating tasks like VM patching, configuration, and process automation. It uses runbooks and integrates with hybrid environments. What is Azure Monitor? Azure Monitor provides full-stack observability. It collects telemetry from applications, infrastructure, and networks and integrates with log analytics and application insights for analysis. What is Azure Log Analytics? Log Analytics is part of Azure Monitor. It queries and analyzes log data using custom query language KQL. It helps detect issues, optimize performance, and investigate incidents. What is Application Insights? Application Insights monitors application performance and usage. It provides real-time telemetry, distributed tracing, and anomaly detection, helping developers debug and optimize applications. What is the difference between Azure Monitor and Application Insights? Monitor, broad observability across resources. Application Insights, deep application-level monitoring. Insights is a subset integrated within Monitor. What is Azure Advisor? Azure Advisor gives recommendations to optimize cost, performance, reliability, and security. It scans resources and provides actionable best practice guidance. What is Azure Cost Management plus Billing? It provides tools for tracking and optimizing costs, setting budgets, and forecasting usage. It helps organizations control spending and improve cloud ROI. What is Azure Service Health? Service Health provides personalized alerts and guidance when Azure issues affect your services. It tracks outages, planned maintenance, and advisories. What is Azure Blueprints versus ARM templates? Blueprints. Package ARM templates, policies, and RBAC roles into reusable governance templates. ARM templates. IAC for individual resource definitions. Blueprints operate at a higher governance level. What is Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes? It allows you to manage Kubernetes clusters running on-prem or in other clouds from Azure. You can apply policies, monitoring, and GitOps across all environments. What is Azure Lighthouse? Azure Lighthouse allows service providers to manage resources across multiple customers' tenants securely, at scale, from a single control plane. What is the difference between Azure Policy and Azure Advisor? Policy enforces compliance rules automatically. Advisor provides best practice recommendations but doesn't enforce. They complement each other in governance. What is Azure Site Recovery ASR? ASR provides disaster recovery by replicating workloads running on VMS or physical servers to Azure. In case of an outage, you can fail over to Azure with minimal downtime. What is Azure Backup? Azure Backup provides simple, secure, and cost-effective backup solutions for VMS, databases, and on-prem workloads. It integrates with recovery services vaults for long-term retention. What is Azure Machine Learning, Azure ML? Azure ML is a cloud-based platform for building, training, and deploying machine learning models. It supports drag-and-drop pipelines, Jupyter Notebooks, AutoML, and MLOps with full integration into Azure services. What are the components of Azure ML? Key components include workspaces, centralized resources for ML projects, compute targets, VMS, clusters for training, datasets and data stores, data management, pipelines, workflows for automation, endpoints, model deployment. What is Azure Cognitive Services? Cognitive services are pre-built APIs that bring AI into applications. Categories include vision, face, computer vision, speech, TTS, STT, language, translator, text analytics, and decision, personalizer. What is Azure Bot Service? Azure Bot Service provides tools to build, deploy, and manage conversational bots. It integrates with cognitive services, LUIS, speech, and channels like Teams, Slack, or web chat. What is Azure Cognitive Search? It's a managed search as a service that adds AI-powered search to applications. It can ingest data from multiple sources and enrich it with AI for semantic and full-text search. What is Azure Synapse Analytics? Synapse is a unified analytics platform combining big data and data warehousing. It integrates SQL-based querying, Spark, and real-time analytics with tight integration to Power BI. What is Azure Data Factory? Data Factory is a cloud-based ETL service. It enables building and orchestrating data pipelines across on-prem, Azure, and multi-cloud sources. What is Azure Databricks? Azure Databricks is an Apache Spark-based analytics platform optimized for Azure. It supports data engineering, ML, and advanced analytics, with collaboration for data scientists and engineers. What is Azure Stream Analytics? Stream Analytics is a real-time analytics service for processing data streams from IoT devices, logs, or clickstreams. It uses SQL-like queries to deliver insights with low latency. What is the difference between Synapse and Databricks? Synapse, SQL or data warehouse focus, great for structured analytics and BI. Databricks, Spark, ML and AI focus, great for big data and machine learning pipelines. They often complement each other. What is Azure HD Insight? HD Insight is a managed Hadoop and Spark service for big data analytics. It supports Hadoop, Hive, HBase, and Kafka clusters, but is gradually being replaced by Databricks in many use cases. What is Azure Power BI? Power BI is a data visualization and business intelligence tool that integrates with Azure services. It allows building dashboards, reports, and interactive visual analytics. What is Azure Data Lake Storage, ADLS? ADLS is a hyperscale storage solution for big data analytics. Built on Blob storage, it provides hierarchical namespace and is optimized for processing with tools like Spark and Synapse. What is Azure Purview? Now Microsoft Purview. Purview is a unified data governance service. It catalogs, classifies, and monitors data across Azure, on-premises, and multi-cloud environments, ensuring compliance and discoverability. What is Azure Analysis Services? Analysis Services is a managed OLAP service for semantic data models. It enables advanced data modeling and connects to Power BI for visualization. What is Azure Event Hubs? Event Hubs is a big data ingestion service capable of receiving millions of events per second. It's often used for telemetry, IoT, and log data streaming into analytics pipelines. What is the difference between Event Hubs and IoT Hub? Event Hubs, general purpose event ingestion. IoT Hub, purpose-built for IoT, adds device management, bidirectional communication, and security. What is Azure Time Series Insights? It's an analytics service for IoT time series data. It enables visualization, storage, and exploration of billions of IoT events for real-time insights. What is Azure Personalizer? Personalizer is a cognitive service that uses reinforcement learning to provide real-time personalized recommendations. It helps deliver tailored content and user experiences. How do Azure ML and data analytics services integrate? Data flows from ingestion, Event Hubs, Data Factory, to storage, ADLS, Synapse, to analytics, Databricks, Stream Analytics, Power BI, to ML, Azure ML, Cognitive Services. This creates an end-to-end intelligent data ecosystem. What is serverless computing in Azure? Serverless in Azure means running code or workflows without managing infrastructure. Services like Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and Event Grid handle scaling, availability, and patching automatically, charging only for usage. What are Azure Functions use cases? Azure Functions are best for event-driven workloads like file uploads, IoT events, HTTP requests, real-time data processing, and microservices integration. What is the difference between consumption plan and premium plan in Functions? Consumption plan, auto scales, paper execution, max 10-minute timeout. Premium plan supports unlimited execution time, VNet integration, and pre-warmed instances for low latency. What are durable functions in Azure? Durable functions extend Azure Functions with stateful workflows. They support patterns like function chaining, fan out or fan in, and human interaction handling, ideal for orchestration. What are Azure Logic Apps? Logic Apps is a serverless workflow automation service. It connects apps, data, and services using 500+ connectors like Office 365, Salesforce, and ServiceNow with minimal coding. How do Logic Apps differ from Functions? Functions, custom code for event-driven tasks. Logic Apps, workflow-based automation using pre-built connectors. Logic Apps are no-code, while Functions are developer-centric. What is Azure Event Grid? Event Grid is a fully managed event routing service. It connects event publishers like Blob Storage, IoT Hub to subscribers like Functions, logic apps with high throughput and low latency. What is the difference between Event Grid and Event Hubs? Event Grid, event routing for reactive applications. Event Hubs, large-scale event ingestion for streaming pipelines. Event Grid is lightweight. Event Hubs is high throughput. What is Azure API Management, APIM? APIM is a gateway to manage, secure, and publish APIs. It supports rate limiting, authentication, caching, monitoring, and developer portals. What is the difference between API Gateway and API Management? API Gateway, basic routing and traffic management. APIM adds developer portal, policies, analytics, and lifecycle management. What are serverless containers in Azure? Azure Container Instances, CI lets you run containers serverlessly without managing servers or orchestration. They're ideal for quick jobs, prototyping, or microservices. How does Azure Kubernetes Service AKS support serverless? AKS integrates with Virtual Kubernetes to run pods on ACI, enabling burst workloads without provisioning additional nodes, essentially serverless Kubernetes. What is Azure Signal R Service? Signal R Service provides real-time messaging for apps, enabling chat, dashboards, live notifications, and collaborative apps without managing WebSocket servers. What are microservices in Azure? Microservices are small, independently deployable services. In Azure, they're often built using AKS, Service Fabric, or functions, and communicate via APIs, Event Grid, or Service Bus. What is the role of Azure Service Bus? Service Bus is a fully managed enterprise message broker supporting queues and topics. It's used for decoupling microservices and ensuring reliable messaging between systems. What's the difference between Azure Queue Storage and Service Bus? Queue Storage, simple, lightweight for basic messaging. Service Bus, enterprise grade, with features like dead lettering, sessions, transactions, and pub or sub. What is Azure Application Gateway with WAF? Application Gateway provides Layer 7 load balancing with Integrated Web Application Firewall, WAF, to protect against OWASP, top 10 threats like SQL injection or XSS. How do serverless and microservices architectures complement each other in Azure? Serverless, functions logic apps, helps build lightweight, event-driven services. Microservices, AKS, Service Fabric, handle complex, stateful workloads. Together, they enable scalable, modular architectures. What is Azure Event-Driven Architecture? It's a design where applications respond to events from services like Event Grid, IoT Hub, or Service Bus. It decouples producers and consumers, improving scalability and responsiveness. What is the main benefit of serverless architectures in Azure? The biggest advantage is focus on business logic without managing infrastructure. It reduces costs, scales automatically, and accelerates time to market for cloud-native apps. How would you design a multi-region high-availability architecture in Azure? Deploy workloads across multiple regions using paired regions, geo-redundant storage, traffic manager or front door for routing, and database replication. This ensures resilience against regional outages. How would you implement disaster recovery in Azure? Use Azure Site Recovery for VM replication and failover, geo-redundant storage GRS for data, and paired region deployments. Regular DR drills ensure business continuity. How do you migrate on-prem workloads to Azure? Migrations typically use Azure Migrate, which assesses, plans, and moves VMS, databases, and applications. For minimal downtime, tools like DMS or ASR are used. How do you secure a hybrid cloud setup with Azure? Use Azure Arc for unified governance, VPN Gateway or ExpressRoute for secure connectivity, Azure AD plus conditional access for identity, and Defender for cloud for workload protection. How would you design a cost-optimized solution in Azure? Use reserved instances or spot VMs for predictable workloads, auto-scaling for elasticity, Azure Advisor for cost recommendations, and Azure Cost Management for budgeting. How do you build a CI/CD pipeline in Azure? Leverage Azure DevOps pipelines or GitHub Actions for builds, automated tests, and staged deployments. Integrate with AKS, app service, or functions for automated rollouts. How would you design a scalable e-commerce platform in Azure? Use App Service or AKS for front-end, Azure SQL or Cosmos DB for data, Blob Storage plus CDN for assets, Front Door plus WAF for global delivery, and Azure Monitor for observability. How would you build an IoT solution on Azure? Use IoT Hub for device connectivity, Stream Analytics for real-time processing, Cosmos DB/ADLS for storage, Power BI for visualization, and Azure ML for predictive analytics. How do you ensure compliance in a financial services workload on Azure? Implement Azure policy and blueprints for governance, Key Vault for encryption, Azure AD for secure identity, and maintain audit logs with Log Analytics or Sentinel. How would you build a data lake architecture on Azure? Use ADLS Gen 2 for storage, Data Factory for ingestion, Databricks or Synapse for processing, Purview for governance, and Power BI for analytics. How do you design a real-time analytics pipeline in Azure? Ingest data with event hubs, process with Stream Analytics/Databricks, store in Cosmos DB or Synapse, and visualize with Power BI dashboards. How would you modernize a legacy .NET application with Azure? Refactor into microservices, deploy on App Service or AKS, externalize configuration with Key Vault, and integrate CI/CD pipelines for continuous delivery. How do you handle multi-tenant SaaS applications on Azure? Leverage App Service with slots, Cosmos DB with partitioning, and Azure AD B2C for identity. Implement isolation at data and compute levels, depending on compliance. How would you implement a secure remote desktop solution in Azure? Use Azure Virtual Desktop AVD integrated with Azure AD plus MFA, secure traffic with conditional access, and monitor via Defender for endpoint. How would you optimize Azure for a healthcare application? Ensure HIPAA compliance using Azure Policy plus Compliance Manager, encrypt PHI with Key Vault, use SQL always encrypted, and enable secure access with conditional access. How do you support gaming workloads on Azure? Use PlayFab for backend services, VM scale sets, or AKS for game servers, Front Door plus CDN for global low latency, and Cosmos DB for player data at scale. How would you implement a multi-cloud strategy with Azure? Use Azure Arc to manage AWS or GCP resources, Terraform for IAC across providers, and configure hybrid networking with ExpressRoute plus VPNs. How do you design a backup and archival solution in Azure? Use Azure Backup for VMS and databases, and Blob Archive tier for long-term storage. Automate retention policies with Recovery Services Vault. How would you implement fraud detection on Azure? Ingest transactions with event hubs, process using Databricks or ML models in Azure ML, store in Cosmos DB, and trigger alerts with Logic Apps plus Sentinel. How would you build a smart city solution on Azure? Connect IoT devices via IoT Hub, manage them with digital twins, analyze streams with Stream Analytics, store in ADLS, and apply AI models for insights like traffic or energy optimization. What is Azure Confidential Computing? It protects data in use with hardware-based trusted execution environments, TEES, ensuring sensitive data remains secure even during processing useful for finance and healthcare. What is Azure Arc's significance for the future? Azure Arc extends Azure management and services to on-premises, edge, and other clouds. It's key for hybrid and multi-cloud strategies where consistency and governance are critical. What is Azure Stack? Azure Stack brings Azure services to on-premises or edge data centers, enabling hybrid cloud deployments where low latency or regulatory compliance is required. What is Azure Quantum? Azure Quantum is a cloud platform for quantum computing research and development. It provides access to simulators and real quantum hardware from partners. What is Project Silica in Azure? Project Silica is Microsoft's initiative to store data in quartz glass using lasers. It's designed for ultra-durable, sustainable, and long-term archival storage. How is Azure preparing for AI-first workloads? Azure integrates AI through cognitive services, Azure ML, and services like Azure OpenAI. Future trends include deeper integration with generative AI, and domain-specific AI accelerators. What is Azure Open AI Service? Azure OpenAI Service provides access to advanced LLMs like GPT via Azure APIs, with enterprise-grade security, compliance, and integration with Microsoft tools like Power Platform. How does Azure approach sustainability? Microsoft aims for 100% renewable energy by 2025 and carbon negative by 2030. Azure supports sustainability with efficient data centers, carbon reporting tools, and sustainable architecture guidelines. What is the Azure Well-Architected Sustainability Pillar? It's part of the well-architected framework focusing on reducing environmental impact by optimizing resource usage, right-sizing workloads, and leveraging energy-efficient services. What is the role of GPUs and FPGAs in Azure's future? Azure offers GPUs for AI/ML, visualization, and FPGAs for acceleration. Future directions include specialized silicon like NPUs and AI accelerators to support generative AI and HPC workloads. What is Azure Industry Cloud? Azure provides tailored solutions for industries like healthcare, retail, and finance with pre-built data models, compliance, and integrations, accelerating industry-specific innovation. What is Azure's role in edge computing? Services like Azure IoT Edge, Stack Edge, and Arc allow processing data closer to where it's generated, reducing latency and enabling scenarios like autonomous vehicles and smart factories. What is multi-cloud with Azure? Multi-cloud with Azure means using Azure alongside AWS or GCP. Tools like Arc, Terraform, and Kubernetes help manage workloads across multiple providers. How does Azure enable 5G and telecom innovation? Through Azure for Operators, Azure partners with telecoms to provide edge services, private 5G networks, and low-latency workloads for IoT and AR or VR. What is Azure Digital Twins? Digital Twins models physical environments digitally. It's used in smart cities, factories, and logistics for simulating, monitoring, and optimizing systems in real time. What are the advancements in Azure security? Future Azure security focuses on zero trust, AI-driven threat detection, quantum-safe cryptography, and tighter integration between Defender, Sentinel, and identity services. What is Azure Space? Azure Space provides cloud plus satellite integration. It supports scenarios like global internet access, defense, and Earth observation data processing. What are confidential containers in Azure? Confidential containers combine containerization with confidential computing. They allow containerized workloads to run in secure enclaves, protecting sensitive workloads from unauthorized access. What is the biggest challenge Azure will face in the future? Azure's challenge will be managing complexity while scaling globally, ensuring cost optimization, maintaining trust and security, and competing effectively in a multi-cloud world. What is the ultimate vision of Azure? Azure's vision is to be the world's computer, powering enterprises, startups, governments, and individuals with secure, intelligent, and sustainable cloud services across every industry and geography. You've just gone through 200 Azure Cloud interview questions and answers, covering everything from the basics to cutting-edge innovations like AI and quantum. If this helped you prepare, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more expert-level content. Share your toughest Azure interview question in the comments, and I'll cover it in a future session.